When the doctor spoke those words, 3 days to live at most, I felt the world wasn't ending but cracking wide open. I couldn't tell if it was fear or relief coursing through my body, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I had just heard the sentence that would reveal who the person I'd lived with for 42 years truly was. And I didn't have to wait long. My husband Arthur, sitting beside me, squeezed my hand, leaned in with a gesture anyone would have called tender, and whispered something in my ear that no heart should ever have to hear. Finally, then he smiled, one of those smiles that cuts the air, the kind born not of sadness, but of liberation. I didn't react. My breathing became shallow, almost imperceptible. I didn't want him to know I'd heard him, that I'd understood that my soul had just shattered like old glass. I didn't cry. I couldn't. It was as if my body remained there on the examination table, but my spirit was reeling backward through the decades, through every year I had justified him, every cold gesture I had excused, every lie I had tolerated. 3 days to die, but he had died for me in 10 seconds. Before I continue, I want to invite you to do something special. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like. That way I know you value this content. And tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. Now let's go on. When the doctor left the room, my husband took a deep breath as if an unbearable weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He looked at me with an expression I'd never seen. It wasn't sorrow, it wasn't worry, it was relief. Pure, cruel relief. "Honey," he said, his voice soft, almost cheerful. "I'm going to take care of everything. Don't you worry about a thing. Just rest. It's almost over now. It's almost over now." As if he were talking about the end of a long errand, not my life. The moment the doctor was out of sight, he stood up. His face changed. The pretense was gone. He no longer needed it. "I'm going to call the lawyer," he said, adjusting his watch, "to expedite some documents. You rest. It won't be long." He didn't kiss me, he didn't hold my hand, he didn't say he loved me. He closed the door behind him like a man closing a deal. I was left alone in that sterile white room, my heart pounding in my ears. I didn't cry. Something inside me had died, yes, but another part had awakened. An old part, dormant, strong, a part that remembered who I had been before him. A woman who didn't surrender. A woman who had survived worse things than a diagnosis. I looked at my reflection in the window. I saw a 7-4-year old woman, wrinkled, frail, wearing a hospital gown. But my eyes were alive in a strange way, as if behind the illness, behind the exhaustion, there remained a final thread of fire that refused to be extinguished on anyone's orders. And then I decided something. Something no one in that hospital could have imagined. I picked up the phone on the bedside table. I dialed a number I hadn't used in years, but knew by heart. The phone rang twice. Mrs. Rose, a trembling voice, answered, one I recognized immediately. It was Maria, my housekeeper. 30 years working in my house. 30 years seeing what no one else saw. 30 years keeping quiet about things I never asked her to, but that she knew were painful. "Maria," I said, my voice as firm as I could make it. "Listen to me carefully. Help me and you'll never have to work for anyone again." There was a silence on the other end. Not of doubt, but of understanding. "What do you need me to do, ma'am?" she asked, her voice a thread. I closed my eyes. "I need you to listen to everything, and get ready. We have 3 days. 3 days to leave him with nothing. 3 days for him to discover who I really am." When I hung up, I felt the world settle in a different way, as if life were giving me one last chance not to die, but to reveal the truth I had hidden for years. Because if my husband was already celebrating my death, I wasn't going to give it to him without first showing him what a woman who had been silent for too long could do. The nurse came in, then checked my vitals, spoke to me with tenderness, told me I was brave. I smiled weakly, but inside my mind was already far from that hospital. It was planning, remembering, unearthing things he never imagined I knew. When the nurse left, I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I wasn't dying. I was being reborn. And that rebirth would have consequences. Just then, I heard hurried footsteps in the hall. I recognized my husband's voice on the phone with someone. He was saying my name, saying inheritance, saying seize the opportunity. I opened my eyes calmly. 3 days. Just 3 days. But those 3 days were going to change more lives than he imagined. And the first would be mine. Maria arrived at the hospital that same night, her uniform still on her hair, damp from the rain, her eyes filled with a mixture of anguish and determination. When I saw her walk through the door, I felt something like an invisible embrace. She was the only person in my life who had never asked for anything, and yet had given me more than many who called themselves family. "Mrs. Rose," she whispered, approaching the bed. "Don't cry, child," I said, taking her hand. "This isn't a funeral. Not yet." She let out a short sob, then took a deep breath as if gathering all the courage she could find. "You told me to help you, and I'm going to help you. Tell me what happened." I sat up slowly. The hospital gown was too big, and my bones felt more fragile that night. But my spirit was more alive than ever. "I have 3 days left," I said with an almost unnatural calm. "That's what the doctor said." Maria's eyes widened in horror. "No, it can't be. You were fine. I squeezed her hand. "It was a misdiagnosis. They don't know it yet. But I do." She blinked several times, confused. "Then you're not." I shook my head. "I'm not going to die. Not now. But he thinks I'm dying." And that was enough for him to finally show his true colors. Maria pressed her lips together. "Him. Your husband." It pained me to hear it. It pained me to know she had suspected it for years. When the doctor spoke, he smiled, I explained. He wasn't scared, he wasn't sad. He smiled, Maria, like someone receiving news they've been waiting for a long time. Maria brought a hand to her mouth, stifling a cry. "And not only that," I continued. "As soon as we left the doctor's office, he called his lawyer. He wants everything. The house, my savings, my pension, everything I built in 74 years of life." She closed her eyes, swallowing hard. "I always knew he didn't love you," she said, her voice trembling. "Always. But I never imagined he could be capable of being happy about it, because I never showed you the worst of it," I replied. "I hid it out of shame, out of habit, out of fear of admitting that the strong woman I once was had become a shadow in her own home." Maria looked at me as if she were seeing a stranger, or perhaps as if she were finally seeing the real woman who had been hidden behind the docile wife. "Mrs. Rose, what do you want me to do?" I cleared my throat. The decision was made. There was no going back. "I want you to go to my house," I said. "And I want you to open the blue box that's under my bed. Not the usual one, the hidden one." She nodded without question. That unconditional loyalty pierced my chest. In there, I continued. "You'll find documents, recordings, photos. Everything I've saved for years. Everything he never imagined I knew. I want you to bring it here, and I don't want anyone to see you." Maria took a deep breath. "I'll do it. I'll do it right now." But before she stood up, she looked at me intently. "Why did you choose me?" The answer came on its own. "Because you never treated me like an old woman. And because you never took advantage of my trust. You saw everything, and never used any of it against me." Maria looked down, her cheeks dampening. "Thank you for trusting me," she whispered. "And thank you for not letting me die without a fight." She left in a hurry, her steps firm without looking back. I was left alone in the room, listening to the steady beep of the machines and the distant murmur of the hospital. I closed my eyes, and for a moment I went back to the beginning of my marriage. I wasn't always weak. He wasn't always cruel. That's the trap. I met him when I was 30, when I still had the strength to believe that love could fix a broken man. I was dazzled by his confidence, his easy smile, his superficial charm. I felt seen, chosen, needed. The very things that men know how to sell to a woman carrying unhealed wounds. I married him in love. I married him in ignorance. I married him thinking a home was built by enduring the bad so the good could shine. But the years passed, and the good vanished. First came the comments, then the silences, then the indifference, and finally the contempt. The woman I was shrank, and he grew larger until he filled every space. At 50, I no longer laughed. At 60, I no longer dreamed. At 70, I no longer fought. But that night, I discovered something strange. You don't need youth to be reborn. You just need a betrayal big enough. I opened my eyes. The door to the room moved. My husband came in, feigning concern. "How are you feeling?" he asked. I looked at him with a serenity that unsettled him. "More alive than ever," I replied. He didn't understand. But he would. Very soon. My husband left the hospital that night, convinced there was nothing left inside me that could surprise him. But the truth was, for the first time in many years, I was seeing him with a clarity that hurt and at the same time strengthened me. Perhaps it was the supposed 3 days of life. Perhaps it was the brutality of his smile when he thought I was going to die. Or perhaps it was simply that on the brink of an imagined death a woman stops lying to herself. I watched him from the window as he walked toward the parking lot, talking to someone on the phone. Even from that distance I could see the way he gestured, how he moved his right hand with impatience. How he nodded his head like someone who had just received news that confirmed his expectations. He wasn't sad, he wasn't worried. He seemed excited, as if the possibility of my death had been the key to a new life. I lay back on the pillow, feeling the hospital's chill seep into my bones. I never imagined that the man with whom I had shared dinners, vacations, family photos, and entire nights of silence would be capable of wishing for my end with such ease. But life at 74 had already taught me that some truths only emerge when death enters the conversation. After midnight, Maria returned. She entered the room with a cloth bag clutched to her chest. "Here it is, ma'am," she said in a tense whisper. The mere sound of her voice gave me strength. "Did anyone see you?" "Just the neighbor's dog." She tried to smile, but he doesn't count. I opened the bag. The blue folder was there intact. "Sit down, child," I told her. "This is just the beginning." She obeyed and closed the door carefully. I opened the folder and spread its contents on the bed, all the documents I had saved for years, papers he never imagined I kept. Invoices, contracts, bank statements, printed copies of emails transcribed, recordings, photographs. "Oh my God," Maria said, her hands flying to her mouth. "How long have you been saving all this?" "Since I started to notice he was only with me for convenience," I answered without a tremor in my voice. Maria looked down as if it pained her to admit she had always suspected it. "I thought he was just cold, but this—" "Cold would be a compliment," I interrupted. "He is methodical. And methodical coldness becomes cruelty if no one stops it." I showed her one document in particular, a letter I found years ago, addressed to a financial advisor. He spoke of me in the third person, as if I were an object that would lose value over time. "When she passes, the property will transfer smoothly. I just need to maintain the appearance of a stable marriage." Appearance. The word hit hard. Maria clenched her fists. "You don't deserve this," she said with contained rage. "It's not about deserving anymore," I replied. "It's about the fact that he thought I wasn't watching. And I saw everything. Everything he needed to sink himself." Maria took a deep breath. "What do we do now?" "We wait," I said. "He's going to make mistakes. Greed always makes people rush." And so it was. The next morning, while I feigned deep sleep, I heard his voice outside my room. He was talking to the doctor. "3 days for sure?" my husband asked in a neutral, almost administrative tone. "It's difficult to be exact," the doctor replied, "but yes, that's the most likely scenario." "Perfect," he said. Perfect. The word cut through my soul again. When he entered, I feigned weakness. Not out of fear, but as a strategy. "Honey," he said with a false tenderness that almost made me laugh. I spoke with the lawyer. "I don't want you to worry about anything. I'll take care of everything when the time comes." "What time?" I whispered. "Of your passing, my love." "Don't suffer. I have it all under control. I have it all under control." It was the favorite phrase of men who believe women no longer have a voice. But I had one, and I would soon use it with a force he never imagined. That afternoon, while he was out running errands, Maria and I continued to plan. "He's going to try to sell the house," I told her. "He'll do it quickly. He wants immediate cash. He'll want to move my savings. He'll sign documents, make calls, and you are going to be very attentive. Do you want me to follow him?" "No need. He'll give himself away. You just have to do one very simple thing." I leaned in to whisper in her ear. Her face transformed with surprise. "Really? You think that will work?" "If I've learned anything," I replied with a slow smile, "it's that greedy men don't see traps. They only see opportunities." As evening fell, he returned to the hospital. His shirt was wrinkled, his cologne stale, his eyes bright with the look of someone who has spent hours making plans that don't include anyone else. "I spoke with the bank," he said. "Everything is moving forward." "That's good," I murmured. "It gives me peace." He smiled again. "Go in peace, my love. I'll be here to take care of everything." And right there, I knew there was no room left for doubt. My husband was already celebrating my funeral. And I was already celebrating his downfall. Because sometimes, life is like that. You have to die a little to see who wants to bury you before your time. And I was more alive than ever. The morning of the 4th day in the hospital began with a different kind of silence. One that woke me before the nurse came in to check my vitals. I felt no pain, no dizziness, none of the exhaustion that should accompany someone with 3 days to live. My body, despite my 74 years, was as stable as it was before I came in. And then I knew. The medical error was about to be revealed. At 8 a.m., sharp Dr. Evans walked into my room. He closed the door more carefully than necessary, as if the very air needed to remain undisturbed. "Mrs. Rose," he said, his brow furrowed. "We need to talk." I gestured for him to come closer. He sat on the edge of the bed, reviewing my chart with trembling hands. "There's been a mistake," he confessed. I watched him without blinking. "A mistake," I repeated, my voice weak but firm. "Yes. Your lab results, they weren't yours. There was a mix-up with another patient. You are not dying." I didn't react as he expected. I didn't jump for joy or weep with relief. I just took a deep breath. "And does my husband know?" I asked. "Not yet," he replied. "I came to inform you first. We must correct what was said as soon as possible." That's when the entire universe seemed to align on a single point. I had my life, he had his lies, and that combination was explosive. I took the doctor's hand and looked at him intently. "Don't tell my husband anything." He widened, his eyes confused. "I'm sorry. Don't tell him I'm alive," I repeated. "But Mrs. Rose, he's your husband." The logical thing, I interrupted, would have been for him to cry when he thought I was going to die, not to smile. The doctor, uncomfortable, cleared his throat. I didn't know that. You didn't have to. But you know it now. And I need you to help me." He frowned. "Help you with what?" "Help me let him show what kind of man he is when he thinks I'm not watching." The doctor took off his glasses, rubbed them with a cloth, and sighed like a man who has just found himself in the middle of a hurricane without warning. "This is irregular, Mrs. Rose. Highly irregular. It's also irregular that he's moving my assets while I'm in here," I said, with a calm that surprised him. "Do you want to know how I know? Because 2 nights ago he called his lawyer right in front of me, thinking I was asleep. And yesterday he told me clearly that everything is under control." "Do you want to report him?" he asked. I didn't answer right away because it wasn't time to report. It was time to expose. "I want to leave him with no tools but his own lies," I finally replied. "And for that, I need you to say nothing yet. Not to him, not to anyone. I will decide when I come back to life." The doctor was silent for a few seconds. Finally, he looked down, defeated by a mix of ethics and humanity. "You have 24 hours, he warned. "After that, I will be obligated to update your chart and notify your family." 24 hours will be enough," I said. When he left, I felt an energy I hadn't felt in years. I could almost hear my bones creak with hope. It was as if the announced death had awakened a primal instinct in me. The instinct to survive, yes, but also to settle old debts. Shortly after, Maria returned with coffee and cookies wrapped in foil. She came in smiling, but her expression changed when she saw me sitting up straighter, more alive, more reborn. "What happened?" she asked in a whisper. "The diagnosis changed," I said calmly. Her eyes widened until they looked like 2 full moons. "You're better, you're not going to." "I'm not going to die," I replied. "But he can't know that." Maria set the coffee down clumsily. "What do you mean?" "I have 24 hours to let him show the full extent of his greed. He's convinced he's going to inherit everything and that I can no longer stop him. I'm not going to prevent his fall. I'm going to document it." Maria swallowed hard. "However, is necessary." The vital signs monitor let out a sharp beep. It felt like a signal. I moved slowly to the edge of the bed. I took the blue folder and opened it in front of her. "Today," I explained, "you and I are going to get everything ready. He will fall by his own hand. He just needs time and the certainty that I am trapped here waiting for death." Maria nodded. "I'll do whatever you ask, ma'am." "I know. That's why I chose you." That afternoon, my husband returned to the hospital. He walked in with cheap flowers and a smile that was far too wide. "How is my love?" he asked, as if discussing some trivial matter. "Tired," I replied. He took a seat but didn't look at me. He spent more time checking his phone than watching me. Every time it buzzed, he smiled. He was negotiating my absence and celebrating my premature end. "Everything will be fine," he said, as he stood to leave. "I'll take care of everything." He left without kissing me, without touching me, without looking me in the eye. When the door closed behind him, I knew my plan was written. The diagnosis had changed, but so had I. I was no longer the woman awaiting death. I was the woman writing the downfall of her executioner. My husband returned to the hospital earlier than I expected. Not because he wanted to see me, no. He arrived with the same accelerated glint in his eyes that men get when they believe they can finally do what they've always wanted to do, but never dared. He wore a freshly pressed shirt, new cologne, and an almost obscene calm for someone whose wife was supposedly dying in 2 days. "Did you sleep well, my love?" he said, approaching my bed. He said it without even looking at my face. His eyes were fixed on the hospital chart, on my belongings, on the phone, resting on the bedside table. He was taking inventory of the spoils. I took a deep breath and maintained my role. A frail, confused, resigned woman. The mask of the terminally ill is heavier than any treatment, but I was performing for my life. "A little better," I murmured. I'm glad he smiled. It was the most hypocritical smile I had seen in 42 years. He sat by the bed talking about practical things, as if I were a piece of paperwork soon to expire. The house, the bank account, the car. A new beginning. His new beginning. Then his phone vibrated. He glanced at it, and his expression changed. A different shine, intimate, guilty. "I have to take this call," he said, standing up too quickly. He left the room believing that in my invented weakness I couldn't follow him with my gaze. But I could. And I could also see how the door was left ajar. As soon as he was on the other side of the hall, I heard his low, poorly disguised voice. "Yes, my love. Yes, it's almost time. No, it can't last more than a couple of days. I told you it will be our house then." No, she doesn't suspect a thing. My body tensed so much that the machine registered a sharp spike in my heart rate. The mistress, the house, the plan, it all finally clicked into place, like a macabre puzzle. I had sacrificed everything for him, and he was already celebrating my death with another woman. I heard him laugh. That laugh was what finally woke me up completely. He came back in a few minutes later, acting as if nothing had happened. But now I saw him whole, without masks, without excuses. A small man with a huge ego, confident that my life belonged to him. "I have to go," he said. "There's a lot to arrange." "Of course," I replied, feigning weakness. He touched my hand without affection and left. As soon as the door closed, I pressed the call button for Maria. She entered silently, like someone entering a broken sanctuary. "It's all started," I told her. "I have no more doubts." I heard him. "He has a mistress, and the house will be for them." Maria, who had never been impulsive, gritted her teeth in anger. "That bastard," she whispered. "Tell me, what do we do now?" I sat up a little. Now comes the hard part. We have to let him continue to believe he's invincible. But you're going to my house today. You're going to take pictures, videos, documents, whatever you find. He's making moves. I need proof before the doctor reveals I'm still alive. She nodded. "I'll do whatever it takes." And then came the moment to fulfill what you asked to include. Before I continue, tell me in the comments how this story is making you feel, and what decision you would make. Don't go away. What's coming will shake you. Maria left, and without knowing it, started a chain of discoveries that would change the pace of everything. Hours later, while I lay in silence in my bed, a message from her arrived. "Ma'am, you need to see this." My heart skipped a beat. It was a photo one that left me breathless. My husband in our house opening a safe that I didn't even know existed. Inside were antique jewelry documents, envelopes of cash, things he had told me were lost, stolen, or spent. And he wasn't alone. The mistress was there by his side, going through my belongings with the confidence of someone who already felt like the owner of everything. Maria sent another photo. My husband carrying my piano, the one I inherited from my mother, toward the front door. Another, him taking down paintings from the wall. Another, the mistress trying on my pearl necklace. I felt a pang in my chest. Not of physical pain, but of revelation. I had lived for 42 years next to a man who never saw me as anything more than a benefit. I lay back, breathing deeply. 2 days, I thought. That's what he believed was left of me. And yet, it was he who was using the last days of his life as a free man to reveal himself completely. When Maria returned to the hospital, her face was white with indignation. "Mrs. Rose, they don't want to see you alive. They don't even want to see you dead. They just want your things." "I know," I replied serenely. "That's why they can't know I'm getting back up." She took my hand. "Are you prepared for what's coming?" I smiled for the first time since this all began. "Maria, I'm 74 years old. I've survived poverty, violence, humiliation, silence, and loss. Do you really think a man like him is going to destroy me now?" She shook her head, emotional. No. You're going to destroy him. I'm not going to destroy him, I corrected gently. He's going to destroy himself. I'm just going to turn on the light so everyone can see him. And so it was sealed. The next 2 days would not be about death. They would be about revelation. Maria arrived at the hospital at dawn. Her hair hastily tied back and her eyes red, not from exhaustion, but from contained fury. In her hand she carried a plastic bag filled with objects that at first glance seemed trivial. But when she placed it on my lap, I knew that inside were pieces of a puzzle I had been too blind or too tired to see. Mrs. Rose, she said, closing the door behind her. Today you're going to listen to me. All my life, I have respected you, but today I need to speak as a woman. She took a breath as if opening a wound that had been festering in silence for years. I saw things. She began things I never told you, because I thought you knew, or that you didn't want to know. I felt something tighten in my chest. My voice came out low. Tell me, child. Nothing can hurt me more now than what I've seen these past few days. Maria sat at the foot of my bed and began to speak. Mr. Arthur, your husband. He always treated me differently when you weren't around. At first I thought it was because I was the help, but no, it wasn't that. It was something darker. She nervously adjusted her apron. Sometimes he'd come home smelling of bourbon at noon. You thought he was at work, but many times he was at home locked in his study, and there were nights I'd hear a woman's laughter while he was on the phone. Laughter that wasn't yours. I gripped the sheet between my fingers. I knew much of what Maria was saying, but hearing it with such coldness was like swallowing glass. One time, she continued, he asked me to take a box to the car without you seeing. It was heavy, and had your name written on it. I thought it was something confidential, but later when I saw him selling several of your things online, I understood it wasn't confidential. It was yours. Maria looked down. I should have said something. I should have spoken up. I took her hand. It's not your fault, I assured her. A poor woman's silence isn't betrayal. It's survival. She cried silently for a few seconds. But there's more. She stood up, opened the plastic bag, and pulled out an old, worn notebook. This was hidden in the back of his closet. It was wrapped in one of your old shirts, that's how I found it. A clumsy attempt at camouflage. She handed it to me. As I opened it, a chill ran down my spine. It was an accounting ledger with my name written on the cover. Each page contained records, dates, amounts, descriptions of assets. My assets. Maria pointed to a line. This one says, inheritance guaranteed. Dated 10 years ago. I turned another page. Another line. Plan B. If Rose refuses. Another. Speak with lawyer about legal incapacitation. I brought a hand to my mouth. Maria kept talking. Ma'am, he planned your financial death long before any doctor said a word. You weren't supposed to die now. He wanted to kill you while you were still alive. I felt tears cloud my vision. Not the tears of an abandoned woman, but the tears of a woman who had been betrayed for years without knowing it. But there's more, Maria said, taking out her phone. I have recordings. Recordings. She nodded. He never knew his study had a strange echo. If you talk from the top of the stairs, you can hear everything without him noticing. Listen. She played an audio file. My husband's voice filled the room. When she dies, the house transfers automatically. She doesn't have a good signature. I can guide her hand if I need to. Another audio. If Rose doesn't die this year, I'm going to have to do things the hard way. I've already spoken with Sylvia. She's ready to move in. Sylvia. The mistress's name. My throat burned. How many audios do you have? I asked. 17, she replied. I felt a dizzying sensation in my chest. 17 times he had shown his true face. 17 proofs that he never loved me. 17 reasons not to save him from his fall. Why did you save all this? I whispered. Maria's breath hitched. Because I saw you fading, ma'am. You used to be strong. You used to laugh. You used to dream. But he turned you into a ghost. I couldn't do anything, but I could watch over you. I lifted her face with my hands. You saved me, I said. She shook her head, crying. I didn't save you. You are saving yourself. We stayed like that for a long time, two women from different worlds united by the same pain of being invisible to the men who feed on the dignity of others. At noon, my husband returned. He carried an envelope in his hand. He waved it in front of me with a false smile. "Important documents," he said. "Don't you worry. I'll take care of everything." I maintained my role. "Thank you, darling." He didn't even notice the irony hidden in my words. When he left, Maria spoke in a new tone. "You know what this means, don't you?" I nodded. "Yes. It means we're not going to the police yet." "Not yet." I smiled slowly. "First, we're going to let him cross every line he has left. When he thinks everything is his, when he lets his guard down, when he feels victorious, then I will appear alive in front of him." Maria trembled. "Ma'am, that's going to destroy him." I closed my eyes. "Maria, he already destroyed me. I'm just returning the pieces." As the sun set outside the hospital, I lay back in bed with an unfamiliar calm. I was no longer the woman awaiting death. I was the woman preparing her rebirth. And he was too busy celebrating my end to realize his was just beginning. The doctor had given me 24 hours before correcting the diagnosis, but life or fate, or perhaps my own will for justice, decided to act first. At 6 a.m. the next day, the head nurse rushed into my room. "Mrs. Rose, your husband has demanded to speak with you urgently," she said, avoiding my gaze. "He wants you to sign some documents before it's too late." I knew then that the moment had arrived. He couldn't wait another day, not even a few hours. He needed my signature while I was still breathing. Maria, who had stayed with me all night, stepped forward. "She's not signing anything," she said firmly. I was surprised by her courage. The head nurse sighed. "I know we already discussed it, but he will insist until he sees for himself." "Then let him in," I replied, with a calm that surprised even me. "The more helpless he thinks I am, the more mistakes he will make." My husband entered the room with a strange, almost festive energy. He carried 2 folders under his arm and an expensive pen in his pocket. His smile was a poorly attached mask. "My love, I came because the lawyer said it's best to leave everything in order," he announced. "Just one signature, that's all." Maria took a step forward, positioning herself between him and my bed. "The lady is tired," she said coldly. "She's not signing anything today." My husband shot her a look of pure venom. "And who are you to interfere?" he spat. "The one who takes care of her," Maria shot back, not flinching. It was the first time anyone had spoken to him like that. He was speechless for 2 seconds. Then he smiled. That smile I knew. The dangerous smile. "Rose, tell this woman to step aside." I looked at him with calculated fragility. "I'm tired," I whispered. "Let me rest a little." He thought he had won. He took my hand. I felt his cold fingers. "My love, it's just a formality. If you sign now, you can rest in peace tomorrow." His words were daggers. My hand trembled not from fear, but from contained rage. He interpreted it as weakness. "There you go," he said, with false tenderness, "just one more effort." But before he could place the paper in front of me, his phone rang. He answered with annoyance. Yes, I'm here." "What do you mean the value dropped?" "No, we can't wait 3 days." "What do you mean legal risk?" "I told you to act fast." I heard every word. Money moving before I died, the inheritance being adjusted before it was an inheritance. When he hung up, he looked at me sharply. "I need that signature. Now." Then I felt something very clearly inside me. This was the moment to die. At least for him. "I'm too weak," I whispered. "Maybe later." He gritted his teeth. There is no later. He had no idea how right he was. As soon as he stepped out to speak with his lawyer, I told Maria, "Get the doctor. Now. It's time to disappear." She didn't ask questions. A minute later, Dr. Evans was in front of me, pale and nervous. "Are you sure?" he asked. "More than ever," I replied. Maria closed the door. I spoke quickly with precision. "I need to be moved to another room. He can't see me. You'll say I had a collapse, that I'm being transferred, that I need isolation. Whatever it takes, just don't let him in." The doctor hesitated. "If your husband suspects, he already thinks I'm dying," I interrupted. "Let him believe it," Maria added. "He doesn't want to see her alive. He just wants her signature." The doctor took a deep breath, surrendering to the evidence. "All right. But you should know, this will have consequences." "I'm counting on it," I replied. In 20 minutes, they had disconnected me from the machines, moved me to a different bed, taken me up a hidden service elevator, and transferred me to an unmarked room in the old wing of the hospital. It was a cold, windowless room formerly used for isolation, but for me it was a safe cave. My temporary tomb. My secret rebirth. Maria was with me the whole time. "Are you scared?" she asked. "No," I answered truthfully. Today, for the first time in years, I'm alive. Meanwhile, outside chaos had begun. My husband returned to my room to find an empty bed, silent machines, and a frantic nurse saying, "She took a turn for the worse." They transferred her. "I don't know anything else. Wait for instructions." He lost control. "What do you mean you don't know I needed her today?" That phrase echoed down the hall. Several nurses heard it. Dr. Evans heard it. Maria's hiding at the end of the hall recorded it all. During that day, my husband called his lawyer 7 times, the bank 4 times, and his mistress 11 times. All the calls were about the same thing: inheritances, urgent transfers, legal risks, unique opportunities. Not once did he ask if I was okay, if I was still alive, or if he could see me. He only asked when he could get the signature. When Maria showed me the recordings, I shivered. Not with sadness, but with clarity. "You are seeing his soul," Maria said. I nodded. "Yes. And I don't want it to ever touch mine again." As night fell, the doctor came to my secret room. "Your husband demanded to see you," he said. I didn't let him in. He was furious. Said he had a right. I told him, "Not while you're unstable." He believed me. He believes what's convenient for him to believe. I smiled. "Perfect." The doctor sighed. "Mrs. Rose, you know this is dangerous." "What he's done to me for 40 years was also dangerous," I replied. Maria took my hand. "It's almost time." "Yes," I said. "Tomorrow he will die." The doctor jumped. "Die who?" "My husband," I answered serenely. "Not his body. His freedom, his mask, his story as an honorable man." I pointed to the blue folder. "Everything is ready. All that's left is to act." In the dim light of that hidden room, I felt something deep, something primal, something mine. I had died voluntarily, and the woman who was being reborn now had a new name: Justice. I slept little that night, not from fear, but from the strange sensation of witnessing the dismantling of an entire life. A life I had built with love, patience, and sacrifice, and which he had used as a platform to climb towards a version of himself that never truly existed. At 5 a.m., I was already awake, staring at the ceiling of the hidden room. Even though the hospital was quiet, my mind was not. Maria arrived before dawn. She had deep, dark circles under her eyes and moved with the agility of a woman who had spent the night watching over another's ruin. "Mrs. Rose," she whispered as she entered, "you have to see this." She took out her phone. She had recorded a video from the doorway of my husband's study. It was him, sitting in front of the computer laughing. "When this is over, Sylvia and I will take the house. She's already picked out the new furniture. This time there will be no one to stop me. No one." My heart didn't break. It hardened. "What time was this?" I asked. 3 a.m. Maria replied. "It seems he didn't sleep at all. He's frantic, desperate to secure everything before you. Go." A chill ran through me. Today was the day. The day I would die for him, and he would die to himself. Mid-morning, Dr. Evans entered with a grave expression. "Your husband wants to see you," he announced. "He's demanding access. He's very agitated." "What did he say exactly?" I asked. "That you have to sign today, that he can't wait any longer, that you have no right to block his affairs in your condition." I knew then that we were ready. "Doctor," I said, looking him in the eye, "today is the day. I need you to let him in, but not to see me." He frowned. "I don't understand." "You will. I want you to take him to the empty room on the 3rd floor. The one with the hospital security cameras. You know it." "Yes. But that room is out of use. Old isolation. Perfect. Take him there. I want it all recorded." The doctor swallowed hard but nodded. Medical ethics had its limits, but human justice had its own. By 11 a.m. The hospital was buzzing with rumors. My husband had paced 3 floors looking for answers, pressuring nurses, causing arguments, demanding to enter a room where my wife is dying. The word dying left his mouth with an ease that made me nauseous. Finally, Dr. Evans appeared. "Sir," he said firmly, "the patient has been moved for final palliative care. She cannot speak. If you wish to see her, you must follow me. No recording or photos are permitted." He nodded, looking like an actor before stepping on stage. I brought what she needs to sign, he said. His voice trembled with impatience. Not with sadness. Never with sadness. The doctor led him to the empty room on the third floor. A white bed, a bedside table, a dim lamp. Nothing more. No monitors, no nurses, no medical equipment. Just silence. Maria and I watched from the adjacent room hidden behind a one-way mirror. I sat with the blue folder in my lap, and the hospital camera was recording everything. My husband entered, stopping in the middle of the room, looking around. Rose, he called with feigned drama. No one answered. He approached the empty bed. Rose, he repeated, this time with impatience. You're not in a state for this. I need that signature. He ran a hand through his hair, annoyed. God, you can't even die easily. Maria squeezed my arm. I kept my gaze fixed. My husband sat on the edge of the bed, opened the folder he was carrying, and spread out the papers. Anyway, he muttered, I already have a copy of your signature. The lawyer said there won't be any problems. A cold dread washed over me. Maria stifled a gasp. We were recording the most important confession. He took out his pen, leaned over the table, and began to draw my signature, mimicking my handwriting with sickening precision. The camera captured everything, audio included. My entire life, 42 years of marriage, of silences, of humiliations, was summed up in that movement of his hand, forging my name. Done, he said, satisfied. He stood up, looked again at the empty bed, and said something that sealed his fate. Don't worry, Rose. I know you wanted what was best for me, and what's best for me is for you to be gone once and for all. Maria clamped her hands over her mouth to keep from crying out. I closed my eyes for a second, not out of sadness, but to let in the calm I needed for what was to come. The doctor entered then. Sir, we need you to leave. The patient is being prepared for her final care. Perfect, he replied, putting the papers in his briefcase. Let me know when it's over. When he left the room, Maria looked at me. Ma'am, you heard that. You heard him. He said what was best was, yes, I replied calmly. He said it. It means I have nothing left to prove, I interrupted. He dug his own grave. In the afternoon, the doctor came to see me with a different folder. It's all here, he said. Recordings, transcripts, times movements. We documented it as you asked. I took the folder. It felt heavier than the years of marriage I had carried. And him, I asked, still calling his lawyer. He's euphoric. Thinks today is the day he closes the deal. I smiled slowly. Today we will be closing everything. Maria took a deep breath. And tomorrow, I said, he will wake up in a world that no longer belongs to him. At 8 p.m. I got out of bed for the first time since I faked my decline. My legs were shaky, but not from weakness. It was from rebirth. Maria helped me change my clothes, combed my hair, gave me a mirror. I saw myself. The woman in front of me was not a victim. She was a weapon. A woman who had died voluntarily and who was now returning with a name, a voice, and proof. Are you ready? Maria asked. I nodded. Yes, I'm sure. I looked her directly in the eye. My husband spent 40 years preparing for my death. It's time he saw what my life means. We left the hospital in silence, Maria and I, protected by the discretion of Dr. Evans, who signed the discharge papers as if I were being transferred to a specialized facility. No one suspected that what I was really doing was escaping not from death, but from a lie. The night was cold, a fine drizzle falling on my hands as we walked to Maria's car. For the first time in days, I breathed fresh air. Air that tasted of freedom. Where are we going? She asked as she started the engine. To see someone who has been waiting for this visit for years, I replied. The car moved through the dark streets until it reached a sober building with a metal plaque at the entrance, Davies and Associates Attorneys at Law. Maria looked at me in surprise. A law firm? Yes, I replied. If he prepared a false will to condemn me, I will prepare a real one to free myself. We went up in the elevator. The metallic sound reminded me of every document I had signed, trusting a man who deserved neither my signature nor my trust. On the second floor, a secretary greeted us with a mix of curiosity and haste. Mrs. Rose, please come in. Mr. Davies is expecting you. I entered the lawyer's office. Mr. Davies, an older man with white hair and thick glasses, stood up when he saw me. His expression was one of surprise and relief. Rose, I thought you were very ill. That's what everyone thinks, I replied serenely. Except me. He frowned. Does your husband know? He mustn't know until tomorrow. The lawyer motioned for me to sit. "What can I do for you?" I took all the documents and recordings from the blue folder. I placed them on his desk like someone laying out a body that needs to be identified. "I want to make it clear that he will not receive a single cent if anything happens to me. I want to change my will, protect my assets, and ensure that he has no power over my life." The lawyer quickly read a few papers. When he listened to the audio clips, he sat motionless, his jaw tight. "This is serious, Rose. Very serious." "For him," I said simply, "he has attempted to forge your signature, made illegal transfers, manipulated documents, spoken of having you declared incapacitated." "I know," I replied. "That's why I'm here." Mr. Davies put the headphones down and looked at me intently. "What exactly do you want?" The answer had been inside me for years. I want to disappear from his life legally and emotionally. I want that when he discovers tomorrow that I am still alive, he will have absolutely nothing to stand on. No assets, no rights, no excuse to come near me. The lawyer picked up his pen. "Then, let's begin, right now." I spent 2 hours signing new documents, revoking powers of attorney, nullifying old wills, and creating a new one. In my new will, I left everything to 2 people, my granddaughter, the only innocent one in that broken family, and Maria. When Maria saw her name, she covered her mouth. "No, ma'am, I can't accept." "You're not accepting anything," I interrupted. "You earned it with your loyalty. He had 40 years to value me. You saved me in 2 days." Maria wept silently. The lawyer continued drafting until the moon was high and the clock struck nearly midnight. When we finished, he stamped his final seal and handed me a copy. "Here you are, Rose," he said. "Your life is your own again." My hands trembled as I held that paper. "Thank you," I whispered. "Don't thank me," he replied sternly. "Thank yourself. You were the one with the courage to come here." We left the law office after midnight. The rain had stopped. The pavement shone like a mirror, reflecting a clearer version of me. "Where to now?" Maria asked. "Home," I replied. Her eyes widened. "But your husband?" "My husband thinks I'm dying, and tomorrow he will think I'm dead." It's time to enter the house like a ghost, coming to see her own grave. We arrived at the house at 1 a.m. Everything was silent. Maria and I entered stealthily. The lights were off except for the one in the study where he used to lock himself away to make his plans. Through the ajar door we heard his voice. "Yes, my love. Everything gets settled tomorrow. Tomorrow it will finally be our house." What was that? "Yes, yes. I promise the renovations will be just how you want them. Rose doesn't count anymore. Rose doesn't count anymore." I stood frozen in front of the door, feeling those words pierce my skin like old thorns. But I didn't cry. I had run out of tears that night. I was left with only the truth. Maria looked at me. "Ma'am, do you want to go in?" "No," I replied. "I want him to live this one last night, believing he has won. Because the fall from a greater height always hurts more." We returned to the car. Maria drove me back to the hospital to my secret room. Dr. Evans feigned surprise when he saw me arrive. "Where have you been?" he asked, acting his part. "Being reborn," I replied. When I lay down, I felt an absolute lucidity. In a few hours, my husband would wake up believing he had everything under control, that I was dying, that all he had to do was wait for my end to take possession of my entire life. But what he was really going to receive was the news he never imagined. I was alive, and he no longer had anything. The will that left him out existed. The one that favored him never did. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. "Tomorrow," I whispered, "the man who believed my life belonged to him will die, and I will finally live." The dawn of the next day arrived with a deceptive calm, as if the entire world were holding its breath before witnessing an earthquake. I was sitting on the bed in the hidden room, my hands resting on the blue folder while Maria carefully combed my hair. I felt strangely light. It wasn't peace. It was preparation. "Today's the day," Maria said, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "Yes," I replied. "Today he's going to meet me for the first time." At 7 a.m., Dr. Evans entered with his usual expression of worried conspiracy. "Your husband arrived 10 minutes ago," he reported. "He demanded to see you. Says he has a right before you." He cleared his throat. "Pass away." "Perfect," I said. "Let him in." But not to see me. He understood. At 7:15, my husband entered the empty room on the 3rd floor, the one where he had already confessed his intent to forge my signature. This time, however, the bed was made. Sheets in order, a crucifix on the table, a dim lamp, the ideal setting for a final goodbye. I watched from the adjoining room behind the one-way mirror. My husband walked in slowly, as if playing the role of the bereaved widower-to-be. His face, however, showed no sadness, no fear, not even affection. It showed a dizzying anxiety, the gleam of someone seconds away from claiming their prize. "Rose," he whispered with false emotion. "I'm here." He approached the edge of the empty bed. He took the imaginary hand I should have been holding. "I know you can't speak," he continued. "But I want you to know, I did everything for us." Maria squeezed my arm. I kept my face serene. "And today," he went on, "I'm going to sign what's left, so your departure can be orderly. Orderly as if I were a piece of furniture being removed from a room." Then he took out his folder, the same one where he had stored the forged signature. "There," he muttered. "Nothing can go wrong now." At that moment, the doctor entered, adopting the grave tone we had rehearsed. "Sir," he said, "the patient has decompensated. We lost vital signs minutes ago." My husband's eyes widened, but not in shock, not in pain. In pure relief. "She's dead. We are completing the protocols," the doctor replied. My husband let out a long, loose sigh of relief. Then he said, "Can I proceed with the documents?" The doctor looked at him with a mixture of disbelief and contempt. "It's a delicate matter, sir," he said. "But yes. There is nothing now to prevent you from acting as you see fit." My husband smiled. Smiled like a predator that finally sees its prey fall. "Good. Very good." He turned, walked out of the room, with a light, almost youthful step, and headed straight for the elevator. "Are you going to notify the family?" the doctor called after him. "Later," he replied without stopping. "First, I have to go to the law office. Today is going to be a great day." The elevator doors closed. Maria let out a shaky breath. "Ma'am, he's celebrating your death." "I know," I said. "That's why it's necessary for him to see me with his own eyes when he returns." By noon, everything was ready. The head nurse, the doctor, and Maria had followed my instructions to the letter. My husband would receive a call telling him to return to the hospital to pick up some documents. He would think it was just another formality, but that formality would be his ruin. At 1230, the elevator chimed again. My husband arrived on the third floor, proud, arrogant, confident. The head nurse was waiting for him outside my official room. I wasn't there anymore, but he didn't know that. "Sir," she said in a grave tone, "the patient is waiting for you." What I thought. Sometimes before the end, patients regain consciousness. Brief moments of lucidity. He swallowed hard, afraid I might have said something inconvenient before dying. He entered, and there I was, sitting up in bed in clean clothes, my hair combed. Alive. Completely alive. He stood frozen, his mouth hanging slightly open as if he were seeing a ghost. What is this?" he stammered. I watched him calmly. "Good afternoon," I said. "I see your day started well." He took a step back. You were dying." "It's funny," I replied, "because I was thinking the same thing about you." He fumbled for his phone, pale and trembling. "What is this joke I'm calling the doctor?" "Call him," I smiled. "He'll explain exactly what he saw. And what he recorded." Maria entered then with the blue folder. She placed it in front of him. "All your calls," she said. "All your signatures. All your intentions." He opened the folder with clumsy hands. He began to tremble. The color drained from his face. This can't be legal," he whispered. "Oh," I replied, "but it is. Very legal. More legal than forging my signature, for example. Or selling my belongings before I die. Or planning my mental incapacitation." He swallowed. I was confused. "You were excited," I corrected him. "And I have recordings that prove it." "You deceived me," he shouted, desperate. "I faked my death," I replied. "You faked loving me. I think we're even." The doctor entered, then accompanied by 2 police officers. "Sir," he said firmly, "we need you to come with us. There are complaints in process and sufficient evidence to open an immediate investigation." My husband backed away, but one of the officers took him by the arm. "This is a mistake," he yelled. "She's crazy." "I would be," I replied, "if I still loved you." He looked at me as if I had stabbed him. "Rose, please." You celebrated my death," I said softly. "And today we celebrate your truth." The officers led him out of the room. He was still muttering, denying, pleading. I watched him go without tears, without rage, without fear. Only with relief. Maria sat beside me, trembling. Ma'am, you did it. I shook my head slowly. No, child. He destroyed himself. I just turned on the light. When the officers took my husband away, the entire hospital seemed to hold its breath for a few seconds, as if even the hallways understood that something had changed forever. I remained seated on the bed with the blue folder on my lap, feeling a relief so profound I could barely recognize it. It wasn't happiness, nor was it pure revenge. It was something quieter, more mature. It was liberation. Maria came over and offered me a glass of water. Are you okay? She asked, her eyes moist. I'm alive, I replied. That's already more than he was hoping for today. She managed a small smile. Do you think he'll try to get out of this? Of course, I said without hesitation. Men like him never believe they're responsible for anything. But I also know that the evidence is stronger than his words. Dr. Evans entered at that moment, letting out a deep sigh. I never thought I'd see something like this, he said. Your husband? Well, now the detainee. Tried to blame me for his forgery. Said I was involved. Predictable, I replied. He always looks for someone else to carry his guilt. Don't worry, the doctor added. The cameras speak for themselves. I nodded. I had waited for this moment for years without knowing it. Mid-afternoon, the head nurse brought news. Mrs. Rose, there are 2 people in the waiting room asking for you. A young woman and an older man. The woman, she says, she's your daughter-in-law. I was surprised. My daughter-in-law never visited me in the hospital, not even as a family courtesy. But something had to be different now. Maria helped me into a clean robe and accompanied me to the visitors' lounge. There they were, Sophia, my son's wife, her face distraught, and Mr. Henderson, our neighbor of many years. Sophia rushed toward me. Mrs. Rose, she exclaimed. Are you all right? Is it true that you came back to life? I asked with gentle irony. She looked down ashamed. Your son called me crying, she said. He told me you were dying, that his father was devastated that the hospital was asking for documents. There it was, his mark right to the end, manipulating everyone. Your father-in-law was not devastated, I replied. He was celebrating. Sophia's eyes widened in horror. I didn't know. He just told me I had to help him with some papers. Mr. Henderson raised his hand. I knew, he interrupted. I overheard your husband on the phone with a woman. He referred to your death as if it were a formality, and said the house. The house was already theirs. I felt a pang, but it didn't hurt like before. Thank you for coming, I said. I need you both to give testimony when the time comes. They both nodded. In their faces I saw something I didn't expect, respect. When I returned to my hidden room, I met the public defender the officers had assigned to begin the investigation. He was a young man with clear eyes and a firm voice. Mrs. Rose, he said, greeting me. I've reviewed the documents and recordings. Your case is solid, even more so than I imagined. I laced my fingers together calmly. Tell me the truth, I requested. How much trouble is he in? Forgery, attempted fraud, manipulation of legal documents, emotional coercion, irregular financial transfers, and the cherry on top. Celebrating the death of your spouse before it occurred to gain benefits. The lawyer took a deep breath. He could face between 5 and 12 years depending on the judge. I didn't feel joy. I felt justice. I felt balance for the first time in decades. I want my statement to be public, I said. The lawyer looked up. Public. Yes, I replied. My husband always cared about his image as an exemplary man. It's time for people to know the man who hid behind that facade. The lawyer gave a slight smile. It will be a very high-profile process, he warned. I've lived for 74 years in silence, I said. I think it's time to make some noise. That night, as the hallways emptied and the hospital lights dimmed, Maria brought me a cup of tea. What are you thinking, ma'am? She asked. That my life begins tomorrow, I replied. And that his ended today. She sat beside me. But the worst is still to come, she said quietly. Yes, I agreed. His public fall. Maria frowned. Do you really want to see that? I looked out the window. The night was dark, but it didn't intimidate me. I don't want to see him fall, I said. I want to see myself standing. Maria took my hand. You are already standing. I smiled. It was true. At 11 p.m., the hospital was nearly silent when the doctor burst into my room with an envelope. Mrs. Rose, he said, I didn't want you to fall asleep without seeing this. He handed me the envelope. What is it? Something the police found in your husband's desk, he replied. I opened it. Inside was a folded document. When I slid it out, my hands froze. It was a copy of a draft will signed by me. My forged signature, declaring him the sole heir, dated the day before I was admitted to the hospital. I was silent for almost a minute. Are you all right? The doctor asked. I'm complete, I answered slowly. There's nothing left to discover. Everything is on the table. Maria knelt before me. Ma'am, you have everything. Everything. To finish him. I shook my head gently. No, Maria. I have everything to start over. That was the first night in years that I slept soundly without fear of waking up next to an enemy, without fear that my life was being negotiated while I closed my eyes. I slept, knowing that my name, my house, my dignity were mine again. And when the sun came up, the world would know it too. I woke before dawn with the strange feeling that the air in the room had changed. It was no longer heavy with fear or the bitter scent of betrayal. It was clean air, new, almost childlike. At 74, it was the first time I felt I was about to live a day that belonged entirely to me. Maria came in with a thermos of coffee and a tired smile. Today will be hard, she said, pouring a cup. Hard, but beautiful. Beautiful isn't a word I've used much lately, I replied. Well, get used to it, she retorted, sitting beside me. Because after today, your life is going to feel different. I took a sip of coffee. My hand trembled slightly, but not from fear. It was anticipation. Today I would face the world. Today I would stop being the silent wife. Today I would become the woman who returned from the dead to reclaim her life. At 8 a.m., the hospital was buzzing. The officers had returned, nurses whispered in the halls, and Dr. Evans bustled about with a nervousness disguised as professionalism. My husband had spent the night in custody, but he still didn't know the worst of it, that I was alive, that all the evidence was in the hands of the authorities, that his fall would be public, complete, and irreversible. I had made a specific request for that day. I wanted to see him not face to face yet, but I wanted to see him before he saw me. The doctor agreed. He led us to a room with a one-way mirror. On the other side was an interrogation room. My husband was there, handcuffed, his hair disheveled, his shirt wrinkled. He looked older than ever, but not from pain, from weariness, from frustration, from disbelief. He thinks you died last night, the doctor said. They told him the final paperwork would be completed today. I watched him closely. My husband's hands were trembling. He rubbed them together as if trying to erase a mistake, but the mistake was tattooed on his soul. Are you ready? Maria asked. Yes, I replied. I want him to see me. I want him to know that the woman didn't die, the victim did. The officer in charge nodded and switched on a small microphone to the room, though he couldn't see us yet. All right, the officer said. Gentlemen, you can bring in the person, mister. Rose requested to see before we proceed. My husband looked up eagerly. The lawyer, he asked, his voice hoarse. Who's coming? The officer replied neutrally. The only person who has a real right to be here. He frowned, and then they pressed the button that cleared the mirror. The window became transparent. Our eyes met. He froze. Literally froze. There I was alive, standing looking at him with the serenity of someone who had returned from the grave with evidence in hand. My husband opened his mouth, but no sound came out. I felt a small tremor of satisfaction. Not vengeance, not hatred. Just liberation. Hello, I said, tilting my head with an almost maternal calm. He recoiled in his chair as if he'd seen a ghost. You, he stammered, you were dead. No, I replied softly. I was tired. Maria crossed her arms beside me. The officer took a seat across from him. Sir, he began, your wife is here because she has a right to be informed of the process. Furthermore, there is evidence that directly involves her as the victim. He wasn't listening to the officer. He was just staring at me, sweating, his breathing shallow. How he tried to articulate. Stop asking how, I said. Ask why. He blinked. Why what? Why I'm alive, I answered. Or why you would have preferred I wasn't. The officer opened the folder in front of him. Sir, we have recordings of you forging your wife's signature. We also have phone records where you celebrate her supposed death witness statements from neighbors, bank records of illegal transfers and declarations from people to whom you confessed your intent to take possession of your wife's assets. My husband swallowed hard. He sank into his chair, the mask completely crumbling. I was confused. She She was sick, he managed to say. I am here, I interrupted. And you are in custody for trying to rob me while I was still breathing. But you said you had 3 days to live, he shouted desperately. The officer looked at him sternly. The doctors made a mistake. But you, sir, you didn't make a mistake. You made choices. Criminal choices. My husband hung his head. Rose, please, he whispered. I didn't want. Don't you dare use my name, I said firmly. Not in that tone, not from that mouth. He squeezed his eyes shut as if he wanted to disappear. I gave you 40 years, I continued. You gave me contempt. You gave me fear. You gave me chains. And when you thought you were finally getting everything, you celebrated my death. My voice didn't tremble. It wasn't a shout. It was a sentence. The officer intervened. Mrs. Rose, you can leave if you wish. You've said enough. No, I replied. I have one more thing to say. I took a step closer to the window. My husband looked up trembling. Listen to me very carefully, I said, my eyes locking with his. The Rose you knew is dead. She died the day you celebrated her end. The woman you see here owes you nothing. He broke down in tears. Not from remorse, but from fear, from loss, from his fall. Please, Rose, don't let them lock me up. I'm your husband. I smiled with a calm that destroyed him more than my anger. No. You stopped being my husband when you took ownership of my death before it even happened. The officer signaled. The agents moved to escort him out. Rose, please, he yelled as they led him away. Don't leave me like this, don't leave me. I watched him without blinking. I'm not leaving you. You left yourself. The doors closed behind him. The room fell silent. Maria put her arms around my shoulders. You just did something enormous, she said. Something not many women dare to do. I sighed for the first time without pain. I didn't do it out of bravery, I replied. I did it because I had nothing left to lose. Later, as the legal proceedings moved forward, Dr. Evans took me to the room where they stored my belongings. There was my purse, my documents, and my old journal. I opened it. The pages were filled with words I had written in silence for years. Words of pain, of confusion, of fear, but also of hope. Maria looked through it carefully. This is all yours. Yes, I smiled. It's my story before this day. And now, I looked at the window. The sun was streaming in for the first time in weeks, with a clarity that made me squint. Now, I start a new story, I replied. That night, returning to my hidden room, I felt something I hadn't felt since I was 20 years old, a future. I had lived 74 years under the weight of a marriage that consumed me in silence. I had faked my death to save my life. I had returned to reclaim it. Today I had a voice. Today I had a name. Today I had proof. Today I had freedom. I lay down in bed with the tranquility of someone who has crossed a bridge of no return. And before closing my eyes, I spoke in a low voice, tomorrow I am free. I never imagined that the most important day of my 74 years wouldn't be my wedding day nor the birth of my children, not even the day I bought my house with my own 2 hands working double shifts. No, the most decisive day of my life would be this one. The one I woke up without fear. The one where the sound of my own footsteps no longer had to hide behind my husband's. It was the first dawn of the rest of my existence. Maria arrived early with the same luminous energy she had maintained since the moment she agreed to help me. Did you sleep well, she asked, while organizing my things. I slept as if I were 20 years younger, I replied, or maybe 50. She let out a laugh. Today's the day everything becomes official, she reminded me. Statement at the station, review of the evidence, and then, your new life. I washed my face and looked in the mirror. I had never seen myself like this. Free, strong, complete. My wrinkles no longer looked like scars. They looked like roots. And roots don't ask for permission to grow. At 9 a.m., an officer came to get me. Not to interrogate me, not to suspect me, but to protect me. Mrs. Rose, he said respectfully, the station is waiting for you. We have a private room set up so you can give your statement calmly. Your case requires discretion, at least until the DA reviews everything. Maria insisted on coming with me. I'm not leaving you alone, she said. You saved me from a life of servitude. Now it's my turn. I looked at her with tenderness. How strange. A woman who came into my life to clear the dust from my furniture ended up clearing the dust from my soul. Let's go, I said. It's time. The drive to the police station was quiet. I watched the city through the window, a city I had navigated so many times thinking my life was written by others. But today the streets seemed wider, the trees greener, the people less alien. I am alive, I thought. And this time for me. When we arrived, we were led to a small, bright room with a light wood table. On it was a microphone and several neatly arranged documents. The district attorney arrived a few minutes later. He was a sturdy man with sharp eyes. "Mrs. Rose," he greeted with a firm handshake. "I've reviewed part of your file. What you have experienced is something no person should ever go through. But today, we're going to change that. Are you ready to give your statement?" "I've been ready since I opened my eyes this morning," I replied. Maria sat beside me. The DA turned on the recorder. "Let's begin," he said. "Tell us everything from the beginning." I took a deep breath, and I spoke. I spoke like I hadn't spoken in 40 years. I told him what I had kept silent, what I had allowed out of fear, what I had cried about in private, what my body had carried as if it were an obligation. I talked about my husband, his manipulations, his coldness, his hurtful comments that seemed insignificant to those who don't recognize everyday violence. I told him how I had lost my voice, my choices, my name. The DA listened without interrupting, only nodding, taking notes at key moments. "When did you begin to suspect he wanted more than just emotional control?" he asked. "When he stopped talking to me like a wife," I replied, "and started talking to me as if I were a document in his name." Maria took a sharp breath. "Continue," the DA requested. I spoke of the false diagnosis of his relief when he believed I was going to die of his rush, to get my signature of the calls to his mistress, his lawyer, the bank. Of the phrase that marked me more than any blow, finally. "Just 3 days. Your house and your money are mine now." The DA pressed his lips together. That phrase, "ma'am," will be crucial to the indictment. Then I spoke of the hospital, of the trap, of my voluntary disappearance, of the recordings Maria and the doctor had secured, even risking their jobs. Of the forged signature, of his premature celebration of my rebirth. When I finished, I felt that my voice had stopped trembling, that my words no longer belonged to a subjugated woman, but to a woman who had survived. The DA turned off the recorder. "Mrs. Rose," he said, with solemnity, "your statement is impeccable. You have concrete proof, witnesses, recordings, documents. Your case is solid. Very solid. And more importantly, you are not alone anymore. The full weight of the law is behind you now." Maria squeezed my hand under the table. "Thank you," I whispered. "You don't know how much that means." The DA smiled. "Now, if you'll permit me, I have a personal question." I nodded. "What is your ultimate goal? I mean, beyond seeing him incarcerated, what do you truly hope for?" The question pierced me. I breathed thought and answered. "I want my life to be mine again. I want to live without fear. I want to hear my own name, without him being behind it. And I want him to understand for the first time that I was not born to support him. That I exist for myself." The DA made a note. Then he said, "Today is the first day of that life." When we left the station, Maria took a deep breath. "Ma'am, you have no idea what you just did. It was incredible." "I did what I had to do," I replied. "I'm not brave. I'm tired. And sometimes being tired does more than being brave." She hugged me. "I had a mother who never defended herself," she confessed. "Today you defended all of them." I hugged her tightly. "You have no idea how much I needed to hear that." We returned to the hospital to collect my few belongings. Dr. Evans was waiting, his eyes bright. "Are you leaving today, Mrs. Rose?" he asked. "Yes, doctor. Today I'm going home." He nodded. "Your home and your life." He handed me a sealed envelope. "This is for you. A certified copy of all the evidence we recorded here, and a letter from me in case you ever need emotional reinforcement." I took his hand. "Thank you for not accepting money or threats," I said. "Thank you for seeing the woman behind the patient." "Thank you for reminding me why I'm a doctor," he replied. When we left the hospital, the air smelled of rain. I asked Maria to stop for a moment before we went home. I wanted to walk, to feel the world beneath my feet, to remember what it was like to choose my own steps. We arrived at a small, almost empty park. I sat on a bench and closed my eyes. The sound of the trees, the wind of life itself, moved through me like a forgotten hymn. When I opened them, Maria was watching me with a loving sadness. "Ma'am, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking," I replied slowly, "that I'm about to return to the stage where I was destroyed, but also where I will rebuild myself." "He's not there anymore," Maria said. "The house is yours. The life is yours." "Yes," I replied, "but the ghosts remain." I have to go in and clear them out one by one. I stood up. Let's go. We arrived at my house at noon. The police had changed the locks to ensure my safety. The head nurse had come by earlier to gather a few personal items she found in his office for me. The door opened with a soft click. I stepped inside and I felt it all. The emptiness, the silence, the absence of the man who had dominated this space for years. It was an old house, but it was mine. Scarred, but mine. Full of history, but mine. I took one step forward and another, and another. Each footstep was a liberation. "Do you want me to turn on the lights?" Maria asked. "No, leave it dark for a moment," I replied. "I want to see where the new life begins." I walked to my bedroom. The sheets were neatly made, but I didn't recognize the order. It wasn't my way of doing things. We had been two ghosts coexisting. One had to leave. I opened the windows, the light poured in, and with it a piece of the future. "This is where you'll sleep," Maria said. "This is where I'll be reborn," I corrected. Then we went to the living room. The armchair where he used to sit was gone. The TV stand was gone too. Everything he considered his had disappeared with him. I sat down on the floor. "Are you okay?" Maria asked. "I feel light," I said. I never thought emptiness could feel like this. She sat beside me. I looked at my hands at my years. Hands tell the whole story, the mouth keeps silent. "Now I'm going to live," I said. "I don't know how, but I know who I won't be living with." Maria smiled. "I'll be here until you tell me you don't need help anymore." I took her hand firmly. "No, you won't leave. I don't want you as my employee. I want you as my friend. If you want, stay. This house has room for the one who saved me when no one else did," Maria cried silently. "I never had a home," she whispered. "Thank you. You have one now," I replied. Mid-afternoon, the DA called. "Mrs. Rose," he said, "we've just formalized the indictment. Your husband will face charges of fraud, forgery, coercion, and attempted grand larceny. The press is asking for a statement. Do you wish to speak?" I looked at my house, my new life, my newly recovered name. "Yes," I said. "I want to speak. Will you be prepared?" "Doctor," I replied with a serenity I had never felt. "I've been prepared since the day I faked my death." The press conference was held in a courthouse room. Reporters from every channel were there. I wore my simplest clothes, a white blouse and a gray shawl. I didn't need adornments to be strong. When I took the microphone, a deep silence filled the room. "My name is Rose Martinez," I began. "And I am alive." A murmur went through the hall. "I am alive," I repeated, even though my husband celebrated my death before it happened. "I am alive, even though he tried to erase my existence with a forged signature. I am alive because for the first time in my life I decided to save myself." I took a breath. I felt my words lodging in the walls and the microphones in the public consciousness. I am not here just to report what he did. I am here to remind the world that a woman doesn't need to die to be seen. That an older woman is not condemned to silence. That betrayal is not the end. It is the beginning of the truth. I set down the microphone. The room erupted in applause. I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I bloomed. That night I returned to my house with Maria. I opened the windows, turned on the lights, breathed the new air. "Ma'am," Maria said, "and tomorrow, what will we do tomorrow?" I looked at her. "Tomorrow," I replied, "we are going to paint this house." "What color?" I smiled. "The color of the woman who came back from the dead," and Maria laughed with her whole soul. And so did I. Because at last I knew what it was that I had forgotten for decades to live. I woke up today in my house, but not the one I inhabited when he was here. I woke up in the house that was reborn with me. I took a deep breath, opened the windows and let in the new air, the air of a woman who survives death without ever having to truly die. I never thought that at 74 I would start another life. One without fear, without forced silences, without walking slowly so as not to bother, without hiding my thoughts so he couldn't trample them. Today I walk through these rooms and my shadow doesn't tremble. Today I drink coffee without hearing his voice behind my decisions. Today I can say my name without feeling it belongs to someone else. People think freedom arrives with a grand heroic act. No. Freedom arrives when a tired woman decides she will no longer trade her dignity for company, nor her peace for habit, nor her life for fear. I came back from the dead, yes, but not for revenge. I came back to live. Sometimes I sit in the garden and think about everything I lost. Time doesn't return, youth doesn't come back, opportunities don't repeat themselves. But then I think about everything I gained, my voice, my truth, my dignity, my story. And then I smile because I discover that it is never too late to rebuild yourself. Never too late to reclaim your name, never too late to say, "This is me." And this time, I choose to live. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. Your support allows these stories to continue reaching more people. Tell me in the comments what city you're watching from, what you thought of this story, and what you would have done in my place. I truly enjoy reading every message. Thank you for being here.